On a calm summer morning, Daniel stood proudly on his porch overlooking the sparkling lake. His boat, an old but well-kept fishing vessel, floated gently against the dock. For him, the boat wasn't just a possession, it was a legacy. His father had bought it decades ago, and every family memory seemed tied to that water. But as peaceful as the view was, Daniel knew peace wouldn't last. The HOA president, Mrs. Whitmore, had been circling like a hawk. She was sharp-dressed, sharp-tongued, and determined to enforce every rule she could twist in her favor. That morning, she arrived with a letter in hand and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Daniel," she began, her voice dripping with authority. "Your boat is in violation. It must be removed immediately. Our community doesn't allow private docks or personal vessels cluttering the shoreline." Daniel's hands tightened around the railing. He knew this wasn't just about the boat, it was about control. She wanted to make an example out of him. What she didn't know, however, was that Daniel held a secret more powerful than any HOA bylaw, a secret that would turn the tables in ways she couldn't imagine. The next few days were unbearable. Letters arrived daily, each one more threatening than the last. Mrs. Whitmore paraded through the neighborhood, waving copies of the rules, gathering whispers and nods from her loyal followers. She loved being seen as the queen of the lake community. Daniel's neighbors avoided eye contact. Some whispered that maybe he should just give in. But Daniel wasn't easily broken. He knew the lake wasn't just any body of water. His father had left behind a stack of papers, documents Daniel had carefully stored away, papers that could change everything. Still, Daniel stayed quiet, letting the HOA believe they were winning. They fined him for lake obstruction, posted notices on his door, and even threatened to tow his boat. Each move was meant to humiliate him publicly, but Daniel's silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. He was waiting for the right moment, the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth. And when that moment came, the entire neighborhood would learn that power built on arrogance can crumble in an instant. Word spread like wildfire. Half the residents rallied behind Mrs. Whitmore, convinced Daniel was disrespecting the community. The other half whispered doubts, questioning why she was so determined to pick this fight. Tension thickened with every passing day. Daniel kept a calm front. Each evening, he sat on his porch, sipping coffee as the sun set behind his boat. Neighbors watched, curious how he could look so unbothered while facing so much pressure. Children still played near his dock, their laughter reminding Daniel why he couldn't give up. This wasn't just about him, it was about fairness, about refusing to let fear control the place his family had called home for generations. Mrs. Whitmore, however, mistook his calmness for defiance. At the next HOA meeting, she stood at the podium, voice booming, "If we allow one man to break the rules, our entire community will fall apart. His boat is an eyesore, his dock a danger, and his attitude an insult." Daniel sat quietly in the back row, listening, his mind already on the documents he would soon reveal. He knew the storm was about to reach its peak, and when it did, no one would ever see him the same way again. The HOA escalated their tactics. One morning, Daniel found a notice pinned to his door, "Final warning, boat will be forcibly removed within 72 hours. That night, headlights flickered across his yard. Daniel stepped outside and saw a tow truck idling near his dock. Mrs. Whitmore stood proudly beside it, clipboard in hand. "We're done waiting," she said coldly, but Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he walked calmly to the end of the dock, placed his hand on the wooden post, and said quietly, "You can't touch this boat. And if you try, you'll be trespassing." Mrs. Whitmore laughed, convinced his threats were empty. "Trespassing? On HOA property? Don't be ridiculous." But her confidence cracked when Daniel's lawyer emerged from the house, holding a thick envelope of documents. "Actually," the lawyer said firmly, "this lake and everything connected to it isn't HOA property. It belongs to Daniel. And we have the legal proof." The tow truck driver froze. Mrs. Whitmore's smile faltered for the first time. The game she thought she was winning had just flipped in ways she couldn't comprehend. The next morning, the entire community buzzed with rumors. Daniel called for a neighborhood gathering by the lake. With quiet strength, he laid out the old documents, property deeds, maps, and water rights dating back generations. His father hadn't just owned a dock, he had owned the entire lake. And those rights had passed directly to Daniel. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they realized the truth. Every kayak, every fishing trip, every swim had been happening on Daniel's property, not the HOA's. Mrs. Whitmore's face turned pale, her carefully built authority slipping through her fingers. Daniel spoke simply, without malice. I never wanted control. I only wanted peace. But when my family's rights are threatened, I won't stay silent. The community, once divided, now began to see Mrs. Whitmore's obsession for what it truly was: arrogance. Her empire of rules crumbled in the face of Daniel's quiet but undeniable truth. For weeks, the mood of the neighborhood shifted. Neighbors who had once avoided Daniel now greeted him warmly. Children waved as they played near the dock. The lake seemed to sparkle brighter, as though freed from the shadow of constant HOA control. Mrs. Whitmore, however, grew quieter. Her voice no longer carried the same authority at meetings. The community, once intimidated by her presence, now questioned her decisions. Daniel hadn't just won a battle, he had changed the balance of power, but Daniel didn't gloat. He continued living simply, fishing on quiet mornings and tending to his boat. His victory wasn't about pride. It was about protecting something sacred, something no amount of HOA fines or threats could take away: his family's legacy. What Mrs. Whitmore didn't yet realize was that Daniel still had one final move, one that would ensure no one could ever challenge him again. At the next HOA meeting, Daniel calmly stood and placed a single document on the podium. From this day forward, he announced, the HOA will no longer oversee lakefront matters. Since I legally own the lake, I will establish a fair use agreement for all residents. Everyone can continue enjoying the water without fear, without fines, and without unnecessary control. The room erupted in applause. Relief and gratitude filled the air. Families who had felt oppressed by endless rules now looked forward to freedom and fairness. For the first time, the community truly felt like a community. Mrs. Whitmore sat silently in the corner, her power fully dissolved. The very lake she once tried to claim had slipped beyond her grasp forever. Daniel smiled gently, not as a conqueror, but as a neighbor. The battle was never about winning, it was about restoring balance, dignity, and peace, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.